The topic is morality and genetics. You're lucky you didn't get one on quantum consciousness that Casey had suggested. So,
Bring it
where's
on.
Casey? Where's Casey? So,
Tom,
yes,
fear
sir.
not. You're going to get to talk on quantum psychology. And
Oh my gosh, okay. I'll call my daughter in. She is a psychologist. She's got her doctorate in that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read through this. Hopefully we'll be able to make these things work a little bit better. And we'll go from there. So let me read you something rather familiar. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station in which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So does this sound like two friends squabbling over whether to watch CNN or Fox News? Perhaps. Now, let's assume there was television back in 1776. Who would be looking at Fox News? The Tories or the Tea Party members? Think about that one for a while. Who was the conservative in that time? The Tories, right. And the Tea Party members were the activists, the ones thinking outside the box. Okay, and being that I am a poet at heart anyway, I'm sure it's, I want to have some sort of poetry, so that's what I've done. So this is a little poem. It's actually in the form of what looks like a declaration, very similar to maybe the Declaration of Independence. It's a place to sign and all this sort of stuff, so it's a poem. And it's by Brian Johnson. I, ex-conservative, do swear the liberal view beyond compare, Obama's term, all heaven knows, like sweet lush grass between our toes. Conservatives of good intent, as rare a breed from heaven sent. And I kneel before my liberal friends and pledge my heart to make amends. You stood by me when still a geek, forgiveness mine, no need to seek. Help me to see the longer view, rejoin what Nixon split in two. And all of us forget our pride and bury hatchets far and wide. Let politics work as it should, with give and take, sweet brotherhood. I like that. Let's see if I can make this thing work. I don't know if we are. Does it make it work? Yes. Ta-da. Okay. This fellow here is Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. He spoke at TED in, I think it was 2008. That's the picture down at the bottom, if you can see that. A friend of mine was in conversation with Jonathan, and I got to share Jonathan's view graphs for that TED Talk. So some of these things come directly from Jonathan's PowerPoint. So we'll see how it goes. He was an associate professor at UVA. He's now a full professor at New York University, Stern School of Business. He's made quite an impact on the way we think about being politically right and politically left. I got it backwards. But he's a thinker that's really started to make people think a little bit more about why we do what we do when we make decisions. And he's dealt with the idea of morality and certain characteristics, which I will go through for you in some detail. And you can just say quit, and I'll quit at some point. But it's really a most interesting area of research nowadays. It's the most interesting area of it shows promise. There's some downsides to it, because what you learn here can actually be used to help sway your vote. And I've already seen it from I got something in the mail from Diane Black, and she was appealing to me probably more as maybe a little left of center. I don't consider myself a liberal. I don't consider myself a conservative either. I'm somewhere in the middle, I think. But anyway, but she was appealing to a moral trait that I hold fairly high, okay? And that has to do with fairness and reciprocity, that sort of thing. This is what Haidt had to say about some misunderstandings of religion. It might seem obvious to you that the contractual societies are good, modern, creative, and free, whereas beehive societies reek of feudalism, fascism, and patriarchy. And as a secular liberal, this is Jonathan speaking, I agree that the contractual societies such as those of Western Europe offer the best hope for living peacefully together in our increasingly diverse modern nations, although it remains to be seen if Europe can solve its current diversity problems. We're aware of a lot of diversity problems going on in Europe, ISIS and all these inroads that are being made. I just want to make one point that should give contractualists pause. Surveys have long shown that religious believers in the United States are happier, healthier, longer lived, more generous to charity and to each other than our secular people. Now that may give you, every one of us in this room, pause to think, but it did me when I read that. So, for those of you that read ahead, and I think a number of you read ahead by watched ahead, yes, I gave you 2 URLs to read, and I know some of you have already looked at it. I think you're going to find this very interesting talk. Johnson starts with this little scenario. Yes, okay. I had to place the fig leaf there. Okay. Yeah. Jonathan starts with this scenario. Suppose that 2 American friends are traveling together in Italy. They go to see Michelangelo's David, and when they finally come face to face with the statue, they both freeze, dead in their tracks. By the way, you can go to the backyard of the little yellow house at Hogan and Washington and find a concrete version of David, okay, back there. So if you want to go and look at it and see your reaction, that's where you go, okay? Right here in River City. There you go. The first guy, we'll call him Adam. He is transfixed by the beauty of the perfect human form. The second guy we will call Bill is transfixed by embarrassment at staring at the thing in the center. And so my question is to you, who voted for George Bush and who voted for Al Gore? Well, probably most of us know it's Bill, right? He voted for George Bush. The stereotype corresponds to reality, and research bears this out. It really is a fact that liberals are much higher than conservatives on a major personality trait called openness to experience. People who are high in openness to experience just crave novelty, variety, diversity, new ideas, and travel. People low in openness to experience like things that are familiar, safe, and dependable. So, now you know, and knowing is half the battle. So we're working on increasing our knowledge and understanding of what's going on. This is a GI Joe. A friend of mine, when I get a piece of information, says, now you know. Knowing is half the battle with this thing right here. Robert McCrae, who was one of the main researchers in this area, states, open individuals have an affinity for liberal, progressive, left-wing political views. They like a society which is open and changing, whereas closed individuals prefer conservative, traditional, right-wing views. This may deserve a big, well, duh, and I kind of looked at that and said, yeah, I think we all know that. But think about it for a minute. Knowing that now I understand why my Sunday school class at First Christian Church, while a very intelligent and reasoning people, have not picked up on the TED Talks, the TEDx Talks, which are some of the best in the nation, by the way, or best in the world, by the way. And TEDx is just that branch that's given locally, sponsored by a group in Nashville, well, actually in Tennessee. So it's one of the best. We here, out of this congregation, we had 5 people go, 6 people actually signed up, 1 couldn't go. That person sitting in the audience today. On the other hand, as I said, we had these 5 folks go, and I think that says something about the openness that we have towards new experiences and new ideas. So one might ask this question: what makes folks predisposed towards the political right or left? I think I got a slide for that. Yes. This is an 1882 opera by Gilbert Sullivan. Some of you may know it. And one of the characters in that is Private Willis, okay? And I'm going to read through his song. And I think you might, so what is new? What we're talking about here is kind of new, is not new. It's been around for a long time. John Hibbling, who there was a link to a talk, it's Inquiring Minds with Chris Mooney, and it's on the web. It's a blog spot, I guess, or a podcast is available, and you can listen to it. And if you want, I can send you this presentation thing, and you can go click on the links, and it'll take you there. What it makes in this is that it's rather difficult for all of us, whether liberal, center, right, wherever, to swallow this idea that we're genetically predisposed towards becoming a conservative or perhaps a liberal. And now I'm going to read you the song, and there are many videos out there of this, and it's a lot of fun to watch, so I'd suggest you go do it. So here's what Private Willis sings, and I'm not going to try to sing it, okay, so bear with me. When all night long a chap remains on century go to chase monotony, he exercise of his brains. That is, assuming that he's got any. Though never nurtured in the lap of luxury, yet I admonish you. I am an intellectual chap. I think of things that would astonish you. I often think it's comical, fa-la-la-la, how nature always does contrive, fa-la-la-la, that every boy and every gal that's born into the world alive is either a little liberal or else a little conservative. Fa-la-la-la. And there's a second verse. I won't read it. Okay. But it's funny, and it goes on in the same manner. So, maybe we are genetically predisposed towards being conservative or liberal. So now what we're going to do, Jonathan talks about his foundations, and this is as a result of his research. And I'm going to put them up here, and I'm going to read a little bit about why in the evolutionary scheme of things, these particular foundations are important. So let's hopefully move on. Okay, this one's in his original slides, and as I say, I have those. He had multiple images, which got a little confusing, but one of them was a man holding a baby. One of them was the chimp and holding its baby. And then there was this. And I couldn't figure it out for a while. I said, what's going on here? Well, there's the fist and the woman. Okay. So which is abuse. Okay. So why is that ingrained in us genetically? So we're all mammals. We're all of a lot of neural and hormonal programming that makes us really bond with one another, care for others' feelings, feel compassion for others, especially the weak and the vulnerable. It gives us very strong feeling about those who cause harm. I would suggest that this moral characteristic plays a significant role in the lives of UU members. The second formulation, which is an expansion of that, he cites, in the original TED Talk, he cites 5 foundations. And he does another paper a little bit later about whether Republicans or conservatives basically adhere to some of these, and then I'll show you the results, and I'll give you a way of looking at yourself if you so desire to learn a little bit more about yourself. The second foundation is called fairness or cheating, and there's some ambiguous evidence as to whether you find reciprocity in other animals, but the evidence for people could not be clearer. This particular one coming up, let's see, read this. This one is called, it's Norman Rockwell, and it says if you can't read that, it says just basically it's the golden rule. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. So fairness and cheating. Well, why would that be a genetic trait that might play here? And that's, well, in the golden rule, okay, there's actually, as I said, there's some ambiguous evidence as to whether you find reciprocity in other animals. The golden rule is fairly universal, and there's a couple of TED Talks, I'm trying to think of who it was, Karen Armstrong did a TED Talk on that. In fact, it's called a TED Wish, and if you get familiar with what that is, that's nowadays I think it's $1 million grant to go out and fulfill something of some value. The first person that I saw at TED Wish was by Dave Edgars, okay, and some of you have seen it. It's hilarious, it's funny. It motivated my son to, one, get me to go to a TED Talk up in Nashville, and two, for him to write a business plan to start a learning center in Murfreesboro. Now, unfortunately, things got in the way, and that's kind of put on hold, but he did it for, it was like a $100,000 thing. How would you start a learning center to bring all the kids in? So these TED Wishes, if you wish, are very important, but the one I was referring to is by Karen Armstrong. Just go look it up, it's the best thing. Okay, the third one is called in-group loyalty. Okay, and this stems from the need to form and maintain coalitions to compete with other groups for resources that can help assure continuation and success. It drives group members to value loyalty, patriotism, sacrifice, trustworthiness, and to loathe those who betray the group. I have more verbal battles, and I rise to the occasion, on Facebook, and somebody will say something, and it just, that's not true, or I don't believe that. And then I'll go at them, okay, and I'll follow through with statistics, I'll do my research, and then they'll come back with something else, off we go again. So I've tried to get out of that, following that mold, and it drives me crazy. But here's another in-group. Ohio, these guys and gals are all doing the OH, whatever it is, that's an in-group also, okay. And they're ganging together against the other team. Okay. A friend of mine, I'm digressing a little bit here, but a friend of mine one time asked me why I was getting involved in a tennis court. He says, "Tom, you don't do anything that involves a ball." And I said, "Don, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, very simply, there are two kinds of people in this world. Them that are ball players and them that aren't." Okay. So what is that? What's the implication of that? And he said, well, very simply, ball players are competitive. It's win-lose for the ball players, typically. It's the football game, as indicated over here. It's the basketball game. Okay. I am self-competitive. That's me against nature. Cynthia knows I go out and I'll sail. Okay. It's us against nature. It's not really against each other. Okay. And anybody that tries to make it that way is thinks losing a lot. So anyway, so in-group loyalty is his third one. Okay, this one kind of comes home a little bit. The idea of authority or subversion. And this foundation involves the need to maintain social order, create beneficial relationships through hierarchies, and it drives people to be aware of and respect rank and status. This foundation is triggered by anything that is construed as an act of obedience or disobedience, respect or disrespect, submission or rebellion, and with regard to authorities perceived, these folks perceived to be legitimate. Okay, we have a monk bowing to another monk as being obviously maybe more enlightened, or whatever. I guess if Doug were here, he can help, but he's not. And this being able to touch somebody is there's respect involved, and it's this authority sort of concept that when you reach out and touch somebody, there's a bit of respect for that person. Okay, how that works. Alrighty, and the last one of these is purity and sanctity. So there should be 5 in general so far. I think there are. Okay, what we have here, when we think of purity, we think a lot about sexual purity, okay? And this is part of a triptych, actually. It's a three it's in a triptych. You can go look up this on the internet. Obviously, Jonathan found this, and to illustrate some of his stuff, it's very easy. If you put in purity and sanctity, this is one of the images is going to show up. So this is the idea of religious purity, perhaps, or purity of the heart, or purity of cause, that sort of thing. And so according to Haidt, the evolutionary origin of sanctity and degradation, if you wish, is the opposite of that. This foundation was the need for an instinctive mechanism that would lead early humans away from parasites, pathogens, in other words, away from rotting food, corpses. So this idea of feeling of disgust, it comes to play, okay? And so people are repulsed by this. It's apparently a genetic trait. Okay, now hopefully, let's see if I've done this right. Okay, yeah, not so sure. Let's see how it goes. Okay, the next part of here, so let's talk a little bit about this, okay? There's this idea of a kind of a religious purity, or purity of approach to life, if you would. And for the left, this could be handgun control. We got to have our Second Amendment rights. Okay? That could be an issue for them. For the people on the right, this could be left a motivator for those that are liberal. On the right over here. Purity of what we put in our bodies becomes a major issue. So if I wanted to appeal to my left-leaning friends, I might appeal to purity of food, organic gardening, or whatever. And if I was to appeal to the purity part of my right-leaning friends, I might appeal to the American flag, for example. Except the American flag has become basically a symbol of purity of things we rally around. So how did he tease out all these ideas? Well, this is, and if you notice, it says under review. Now, one of the things about Jonathan, there's nothing growing under his feet. He's moved on a little bit. In one of his papers I looked at, there were 6 moral foundations. But anyway, this is one of the earlier ones. And if you notice, it says the guys that were cooperating here, Graham, Haidt, and Nozick, was under review. So take this with a little bit of salt. But nevertheless, there are these ideas, these foundations. I think that's well established, and a lot of people are following this. So what did he do? He said, for moral relevance, when you decide something is right or wrong, to what extent, and you ask yourself this question, what extent are the following considerations relevant to your thinking? So you probably have to come up with an idea of a moral decision to be made, and then see what comes to play. So when somebody is cared for, or when somebody cares for somebody that's weak or vulnerable, that's the care harm foundation, is that important to you? And he ranked it on a scale of 1 to 6. I prefer the Boderick scale of 10. Okay, so but these are on 1 to 6. Okay, all right. Okay, the next one is some people were treated differently than others. This is the fairness reciprocity foundation that he talks about. Okay, And then when somebody showed lack of loyalty to a group, is that important to you in making a decision or not? Okay. And then someone conforms to the traditions of society, authority, respect. Do people give authority to our police force, or do they give authority to a church? Okay, it could be that. And then when somebody does something really disgusting, you can imagine, okay, could be losing your cookies. Do you do well on that or not? Well, let me go back a little bit, and I think I probably glossed over John Hibling's role in this to some degree. He and his cohorts did some work with eye trackers. I don't know if you know what an eye tracker is. It's a little device that sits up here, and I'm looking at a screen, and images are presented. Actually, 4 images are presented, okay? And some are positive, like somebody that's happy, or a flower, which is kind of a positive image. There's beauty in that. Some are neutral, like a chair. TV, something, well, maybe TV might be loaded with some things, but it could be a candlestick. Neutral, kind of. And then there's some that are definitely negative, okay? And what Hibling did was basically determine what the person was looking at when this presented this, and what was the duration that they looked at it. And what they found is that if you're on the right, if you tend to be conservative, what's going to happen is you're going to stare more at the thing in the middle on David, okay? And if you're on the left, you're going to spend maybe uniformly or equally amount to the rest of the images. Okay, so that's kind of the idea there. All right, so what's the result of all this? Now, at the TED Talk, if you went through lots and lots of these, so these things become universal. This is the chart for the United States. Sample size 23,684. That's significant, okay? Statistically significant for this, okay? So what we've got here, upper top line, okay, left is on the left, right's on the right, moderates are in the middle, okay? So these are the 5 foundations that he originally proposed. One is harm and care. The second one is fairness and reciprocity, okay? And as you move from left to right, you notice that the ones at the bottom take about equal value. And those at the bottom are authority and respect, in-group loyalty, the Ohio State guys, okay, and purity and sanctity. So when you're on the right, all 5 of those enter in fairly uniformly into decision-making when you're making a moral decision, or a decision that has a moral content to it. If you're on the left, those things on the bottom don't really count so much. You worry about do no harm, caring, golden rule, fairness, and reciprocity. Okay? So this is kind of the bottom line. And in the TED Talk, he presented, and I haven't looked at it in a while, but he presented a lot of these. Here's what it looks like in Canada, here's what it looks like in Europe, this is what it looks like in China, or wherever, Japan, and so forth. And they look like that, so I didn't reproduce one, because they essentially have that same trend. That's the takeaway on that particular one. Okay, a couple of other little comments. Alrighty, so the big so what? So this is all really nice, but what do you do? Well, there are people, and I suspect Haidt's been approached by either, well, since he says he's a liberal, so he's probably been promoted. He's probably approached by the Democratic National Convention or somebody to do some psychological studies. But here's the things. I'm going to run down through this list. It's in a paper that he presented. So the Foundation 1 group, these are politically things that are important to both Republicans and Democrats. So as I said before, the harm and care, and then he broke out another foundation called liberty and oppression is important. That's harm and care in many people's minds. I agree with that one. And then the second foundations group is important to Republicans, but somewhat less to Democrats, and that is the fairness and cheating one, which up there in that one. The third foundation group is loyalty and betrayal, authority and subversion, sanctity, degradation, and those are the ones that are important to Republicans, but not so important to Democrats. So what one could do, obviously, with this is take this and persuade people to think the way you want to think. That's kind of the obvious takeaway that I had from all this. So is that typecasting? Is that saying left and right are disparate? They should be treated differently? Well, maybe not. I think what it really says to me is that people think differently, and if you understand why, and go back as to why, from an evolutionary standpoint, why it makes a difference that people are thinking in certain ways. Staying with me right now is a fellow that came with me last time when he was here, one of my sailing buddies. Last night we had a little get together, and I mentioned one of these traits, and he says, and it happened to be one of the negativity. We were watching actually episodes of West Wing, okay? And there's a character named Vinnick, who is the Republican candidate, and there's what's the guy's name on the other? Santos, who's the Democratic image, I guess, if you wish. And I said, well, the fellow who wrote this really typecast rightly. Vinnick is on the right, and he thought the worst of his opponent, while on the other hand, his opponent, in this presentation anyway, was actually helping out his sister-in-law, supporting him. Vinnick, on the other hand, took the other tack and says, oh, that's really, really bad. He's having an affair with this woman. That wasn't the case at all. And one of our viewers last night caught that and went right to it. So that's where it takes you. So I'm going to leave it at that. Is this going to come up again? No, maybe not. Oh, it is. Yes. I'm going to end with this. In the words of Groucho Marx, everyone is the same except Republicans and Democrats. And that's it.